Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's workshop on investing in transformative agri-food tech to combat climate change, brought to you by Vantech Angel Network in collaboration with Impact United and Foresight AgriNext, as well as Raymond James. Today, we're lucky to have some amazing industry experts, founders, and investors that will speak to the state of the Canadian agri-food value chain, present investment trends within the sector, and tell you all about some of the most exciting and innovative Canadian ag tech solutions. We hope by the end of this workshop, you feel better informed on the opportunities in agri-food tech and innovation in preparation for the Western Canada 5th Annual Agri-Food Tech Investment Forum, which is happening on November 3rd. And so please make sure you register for this event if you haven't already. Hopefully somebody from the team can throw up that registration link in the chat. With this event, with the investment forum, we want to introduce you to some of the most promising seed stage companies in Western Canada that have the potential to provide great returns for investors while contributing, to the health and sustainability of our people and the planet. My name is Andrea Bravo. I'm the manager of AgriNext, Foresight's Ag-specific acceleration and ecosystem hub. Foresight Canada is Canada's largest clean tech accelerator. We bring together the stakeholders of the innovation ecosystem to support companies leading the global transition to a green economy. So AgriNext is a collaborative approach to shaping the future of Canadian ag tech innovation. Our goal is really to provide acceleration, increase adoption and exports, and provide access to capital, ultimately to bring together the ag tech innovation ecosystem. At this point, I'd like to ask Lejjy to share a little bit about the Vantech Angel Network.
Great, thank you very much, Andrea. We're really proud to be a partner in this event today. Vantech Angel Network was started in 1999. We're actually one of Canada's oldest angel group, and we were one of the founders of a couple of professional organizations, including the National Angel Capital Organization, NACO. And I'd like to brag about the numbers. So, we have been operating for over 22 years. In all of 2020, 87 companies that have come through Vantech have received about $14.6 million in funding. Nothing to sneeze at. And we've got data now for the first quarter of 2021. 55 companies got $3.7 million in funding. So a good chunk of that, we see a big trend and rise in some of the companies in agri-food tech and clean tech. So really looking forward to seeing more of some more fantastic companies coming by our Vantech Angel Network. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Lejjy. Next, I'll allow Richard Muller to speak a little bit about Impact United.
Thank you, Andrea. We're much newer than Vantech on the scene. Just launched in June of this year in an effort to try to bring together a number of individual investors, families, foundations, institutions that are seeking not only a financial return from their investment capital, but an impact return, whether that's a social and economic or environmental one. So we are a broad-based movement that's looking to support anyone interested in thinking about their capital that way. It's free to join as part of some core funding that we got from a couple of organizations to start. And feel free to drop me a line in the chat, and I'd be happy to share more information with anyone. We're delighted to be here today to support this event and invite some of our members to this important topic. We've got a number of people interested in climate change broadly, and this fits right in. So thank you again for the opportunity, Andrea and Lejjy, and look forward to today.
Thank you so much, Richard. So we'll just jump right into it. First up is Lenore Newman with some introductory remarks on challenges and opportunities across the agri-food value chain. Our first speaker today is Dr. Lenore Newman, Director of the Food and Agriculture Institute at the University of the Fraser Valley. She's here today to provide some context on challenges and opportunities across the Canadian agri-food value chain. Welcome, Dr. Newman.
It's wonderful to be here today.
So I guess my first question is, what are some of the most pressing sustainability challenges that are faced by our agri-food sector today?
It's a great question, and it's a very timely one because there are some serious challenges that the industry struggles with. And I do feel the agri-food industry is extremely innovative, extremely good at overcoming challenges, but it is definitely a difficult time. And the first one, of course, is climate change. And climate change poses a really interesting set of problems to agriculture that span all areas of the sector. And the way I like to describe it, it's not so much that it's warmer, although that can have its own challenges. It's that the weather is much more unpredictable as the climate supercharges with energy. And what we're seeing is more extreme events. Certainly, in the West this year, it was about fire and drought. We're also, though, seeing unseasonable freezes and radical storms and floods that are 1,000-year floods happening every 5 years. And so adapting to those changes is going to require a lot of technological know-how to build the resilience that we need. And I would highlight as a subset of that, water efficiency is one that's a real challenge that we're going to all have to get used to in Canada. And out here on the West Coast, we've lived in a kind of charmed life on the coast in that water falls from the sky. We don't have to think about it too much. Usually we do now. And that's what we're learning is water management, which can include everything from, mulching, from adapting to new crops that are more water smart. Just figuring out where we need the water and when. I mean, these are all big problems. But aside from the climate change suite of problems, there are a couple other ones that in Canada, especially, we're going to have to deal with. And the one that has really risen to the forefront the last couple of years under the pandemic is labor, and specifically the shortage of skilled labor and all kinds of labor. To be honest, this is not a Canadian problem. It's happening around the world. I do some work abroad where they're also struggling with this issue. And there, what I think we are going to see is that challenge creates the opportunity for automation. And we're going to see producers looking at any way they can get the labor costs down, not even so much because of the cost, but the people simply aren't there. And that is a massive challenge. And the last one I wanted to mention, just because I do think it's part of the Canadian story, is rapid appreciation in the value of farmland. And that might seem like a good thing if you already own farmland, but it is a challenge if you're a new entrant, is that we're looking especially near the cities, so around Montreal and the Golden Horseshoe and near Vancouver, we're seeing farmland values far in excess of the actual production value of the land. They reflect a certain speculative value. And so to buy in and make your investment actually make sense on a return on investment sense, you really have to be looking at how can I get as much as possible of the smallest possible land in a sustainable manner. And a lot of the technologies I look at are exactly that. And I mean, if we look around the world, places like the Netherlands, places like Singapore, which is becoming a producer with no land, we're seeing a lot of technologies that are asking the question, how do I get the most of my land? And what I like about that is it does also help address the first challenge in that if we can produce more with less land, some of the extra land could be returned to wilderness that would help address the climate change problem. So I think we're going to be hearing a lot about land sparing in the next decade.
Well, certainly, yeah. So thank you for providing an overview of some of the challenges. Now I'm interested in knowing what are some of the most promising technologies or solutions, opportunities that you've come across that you think will be able to address these challenges?
Well, it's a very exciting time in agri-tech in Canada, in my opinion. And I don't see a single part of the agricultural system that isn't being touched by technology right now. And so some of the ones I'm very interested in cluster around an idea that wouldn't it be nice, given the challenges we've had in the last few years, if we could produce as much as possible locally anytime. And I like to call it producing anything, anywhere, any time of the year. And of course, that doesn't encompass all crops, but it's encompassing more crops. So I'm really excited about the vertical agriculture space because it kind of ticks all those boxes. It saves water. Canada has a lot of electricity that's renewable. So we have a lot of the input we need. And it also saves land and it cuts that supply chain down. And, you know, British Columbia imports about $1 billion worth of leafy greens from California a year. And under the current condition, California's production is not sustainable and could even falter in coming years, given their crisis. And if we want to have lettuce in January, we need to think of other ways. That said, I don't like to leave out the expansive crops like the pulses and grains because they're so important. What we're really seeing there is precision agriculture is redefining how those crops are produced using, you know, GPS and remote control of vehicles. Sensor technology is going to sweep out across the whole sector where you really know what every square meter of your farm is doing and what it might need. And kind of takes us past the era of spray and pray, where you know you might have a problem, you don't know where it is, so you just kind of blanket your whole field in an expensive input. We can target that now. We can also target water, which is going to be very important. I would add, because climate change is really challenging what we can grow, we are going to hopefully reap a good benefit on our investment into genomics. Canada is actually a bit of a leader in genomics and does have you know, the genome, the provincial genome and Canadian genome centers that push forward these technologies. I think we're really going to see them come in to provide us some resilience around how to face a fluctuating climate. And I also want to, in the Canadian context, mention the plant-based revolution has been very good to us. And we've seen the last 5 years, this rise of plant-based proteins taking a bigger and bigger market share in both the dairy and the traditional animal protein sectors. Canada has had some good early investment, things like Protein Supercluster have done great work. We have the potential to produce the raw materials for that revolution, and we are. And we're really seeing the emergence on the prairies of, you know, things like pea protein and oats, and I think that's just going to grow. And Canada is so poised to be a major player. And what I'd really like to see, and I think it's a great opportunity, is for us to do more of the processing here. And to not just be providing the raw materials, but actually be driving that revolution. And when we think that the meat industry, the animal industry is worth, though, about $2 trillion a year, even a small percentage change in plant-based is a massive opportunity for a country. And we are lucky in that we can produce these raw materials.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Newman, for providing such an all-encompassing overview of the challenges faced by the agri-food value chain and the innovative technologies that are being developed to address these challenges. We really appreciate your time and your insight, and I'm sure our audience will find a lot of value in what you've shared with us today.
Oh, glad to be here, and it's a very, very rewarding sector, and I really think it's just going to grow.
Great, so next I will invite Steve Hansen, Managing Director and Equity, actually I have a slide for that. Managing Director and Equity Analyst at Raymond James, to speak about investment trends in agri-food transformation.
So thanks for the time, everybody. As Andrew suggested, I'm an equity analyst with Raymond James. covering the ag and ag tech sectors. My day job is effectively covering public equities in the broader ag landscape, names like Nutrien or Farmer's Edge, even Quick Farms you might be familiar with. But I've also been spending a lot of time with the downstream or the smaller early stage startup space across the private landscape. We've only got 7 minutes here, so I'm going to run through a fair bit of content, but just to give you a quick sense for what's going on in terms of the investment landscape in the space and some of the strategic actions that have also been taking place as we go forward here. So just starting at 30,000 feet here, this chart really just illustrates that private capital has been flooding into the sector for nearly a decade now, roughly a 45% annual clip, so to speak. This included 2020, of course, which was marred by the pandemic. We grew roughly 40% last year, which is pretty incredible when you think about the backdrop. And while the data is still rolling in for this year, 2021 is also on pace for another banner year. As the chart does suggest, this data set is fairly broad. It includes or stretches all the way downstream into the supply chain logistics side of the sector, if you will, into e-grocery and other spaces. I like to start here just to give you a broadest lens of the sector and capital flows, but my comments going forward are going to be a bit more focused on the narrower upstream piece, which I think most people associate with. So just a few quick points here. First, the bulk of agri-food tech deals are still relatively small. Median deal size was roughly $2 million last year. That's on just over 2,200 deals that were collected by AgFunder and the Crunchbase teams. That said, over the past 24 months, we've really started to see some large deals come in, almost brute force deals, I describe them as, and in the individual subcategories. And that's skewing deal size up quite markedly on average across the landscape. And that's the same reason we're starting to see unicorns surface here. Just looking at a few of the key sub-themes or verticals that are gathering strong momentum. On the left is innovative food. This is a broad capture moniker that really describes a basket of plant-based proteins and increasingly cellular agriculture, where we started to see some really big deals or bets unfold over the past 2 years. Would just highlight Aleph Farms, Good Meat, and Perfect Day as just 3 recent examples. CPP, I would note, by the way, the Canada Pension Plan is an investor or the lead order on the Perfect Day deal. On the right is the controlled environment ag space. Lenore referred to that indirectly, or CEA as we often describe it. This predominantly includes indoor growing technologies targeting leafy greens and other products closer to the end market, but also it does include, in this categorization anyways, the rise of alternative insect proteins, which are also being grown indoor and controlled environments, predominantly for the fish and animal feed markets. And here too, we've seen some big bets emerge and some companies start to even migrate into the public markets, which I'll touch on in a moment. So just carrying on a couple more themes here. This is just on the left that would highlight ag biotech. This is, again, a very broad capture basket, but it includes a number of synthetic biology platforms that are starting to emerge, some of which target specifically ag and some which extend well beyond agriculture, which is why we're seeing some huge valuations in that space. Ginkgo Bioworks, for example, has got roughly a $20 billion valuation in the market today, but does more than just ag. And then on the right, while still a smaller category in terms of total capital deployed, I did want to highlight robotics and automation, because that is becoming a very interesting category, as Lenore suggested. And we've seen some surprising exits here in the last couple of months and a number of new raises as well, a few of which I've just highlighted below. So this is a busy slide, but it's intended to demonstrate that ag's largest bellwether companies are not standing still here. They've not been idle. They've been very busy acquiring the best and brightest companies that are complementary to their own platforms. Most of those big companies, by the way, are spending a lot of their own capital on platform development as well, but it is becoming a natural source of exits for many of the smaller companies. Now, I would just highlight, though, we do see this trend continuing, but we do see some risk of a slowdown in the larger platform deals, only insofar that the biggest bellwether companies have largely made their bets thus far. So tuck-ins do seem more likely in my mind going forward, but it still will be a prominent source of M&A. This is just another way to categorize the same slide earlier. It just gives you a quick way to see who's been acquiring what across the value chain. Tier 1 OEMs like Deere and Case, for example, give you a sense for what they're up to, would just highlight the Case recently acquired Raven for just over $2 billion. That was predominantly an autonomous bet in field agriculture. And we'll see how that plays out going forward. If you migrate down the value chain a little further here, you can see retailers like Nutrien. And it would also just highlight now some of the new non-traditional acquirers in the ag space that have also emerged in recent years. Companies that we just broadly label big tech, ag tech, and new strategics. I would just highlight TELUS Ag, the local player here, of course, as well as Farmers Edge, FBN, and App Harvest as being some new players that are well capitalized to watch here as they continue to acquire. Just finally on the M&A front, we just highlight that several smaller independent platforms are also now materializing as they reach out and tap the M&A markets. These are predominantly smaller firms that have been able to access capital and are now looking to augment their own capabilities through M&A. That's not traditional necessarily in the earlier stage ventures, but we're starting to see it. Just to highlight a hometown favorite, of course, I just flagged Semios here, who has been very active over the last 9 months with 3 acquisitions, the most compelling being its latest Ag World deal. Semios has raised over $200 million here in the last 24 months. I won't belabor this point, but unicorn sightings are increasingly frequent across the landscape due to the larger size of the deals that we're seeing. We'll just note here that we're seeing these players come up in a fairly concentrated number of categories: ag, biotech, CA, and innovative food. Again, with cellular ag being a core focus there, but I do think you'll see this basket expand as we see other verticals also continue to come forward. This is a busy slide. I won't belabor it, but these are some of the players that have come to the public markets already and a few that are in the process. So the SPAC market earlier this year, if you're familiar, was extremely active, almost hyperactive, frankly. And a lot of companies came to market, some of which are highlighted here or in the process of coming, and others which came through the more traditional IPO market earlier. I would just highlight here as a closing comment that, you know, while the public markets are often seen as the panacea or the ultimate end goal for companies, you know, you have to be careful. Some of them came too early, frankly, I think, and weren't ready for it. And the charts describe that effect. Part of that is also just the valuations were extremely rich earlier this year. And so they were setting themselves up for these declines that you're seeing here. But so I'd probably label it half execution, half market activity and valuations. But nonetheless, these are all public vehicles and we're developing a great landscape for the broader ag tech space. And I think that universe will continue to grow. I'll cut it off there. I apologize, I'm over about 20 seconds, but hope that gives you a good frame of reference.
Thank you very much, Lejjy. Now, I would like to go ahead and would you mind? Thank you. So now I would like to welcome our panel moderator, Alison Sunstrum, to the stage to introduce our panelists. But first, Alison is a venture partner at Builders VC, a San Francisco and Calgary venture capital fund. She's a general partner, advisory committee member of the 51, and a founding partner and fellow in the ag stream of the Creative Destruction Lab. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Alison.
Thank you, Andrea. Lenore set the academic stage very well, and let's just summarize the challenges that she provided. Over the next 30 years, the world's farmers will need to double production to feed, fuel, and clothe 2 billion more people on increasingly expensive land with less water. We need to adopt more efficient and sustainable production methods and adapt to climate change. Now, as Steve mentioned, along with immense challenges comes massive opportunity. As he demonstrated, food and ag tech is an $8 trillion industry representing 10% of global GDP, requiring over $200 billion in annual investment to grow to meet simple market demand. Ag tech investment has doubled from 2019 to 2020, and over the next 30 years, 60% of our physical inputs may be bioengineered. This is a $4 trillion annual market opportunity, and I don't think investment opportunities get much bigger than this. Now, those words were actually Rob LeClaire's words, and he joins us today. Rob is one of the savviest seed investors and thought leaders in the space. He's a polymath with degrees in philosophy, computer science, computational biology, and a PhD from Yale University. He has a deep qualitative and quantitative perspective on the industry. Rob, would you please tell us about yourself, Ag Funder, and where you think the greatest near-term investment opportunity will be found in ag tech and food.
Sure. So thank you very much for the very kind introduction, Alison. So Rob Leclerc, I'm one of the founding partners of Agfunder. So we are an early stage venture capital fund firm based in California. We invest in food technology and agriculture technology across the food and agriculture landscape, and are really trying to identify and invest in, the 3 or 4 most important companies in the next sort of 10 years that come out in any given year in our space. As far as where we're sort of really focused on, and I'll just limit it to one particular area. We are extraordinarily bullish on automation, and this has actually came quite a bit faster than we expected. We really made a push in the beginning of 2020 in this space. We made a couple investments, one in Root AI in 2019, and then Bear Flag Robotics in the summer of 2020. Actually, both of those companies were acquired this year. And from my perspective, there can be nothing more transformational in agriculture than automation. It's just sort of historically, if we looked at it, there's been this a big trend in ag tech is the substitution of labor for capital, and this is sort of the ultimate example of that. If we could sort of sit and tend every individual plant, we could get rid of chemicals and reduce those things. That's really a lot of this has to do with labor, and automation is going to unlock tremendous amounts of value, allow us to do things and grow crops that we could never have grown before, decommoditize our food system, and bring new efficiencies.
Thank you, Rob. It's very interesting to see some of the investments that you've made and the success thus far, so I appreciate your thoughts. Remi Schmaltz is someone that I've known for a very long time, and when I went back and looked at Remi's bio, I was really impressed. And, sometimes when you're close to people, you don't really keep up on top of what they've been doing. But Remi is a serial entrepreneur with roots deep in the ag industry. And he has a scar tissue to support 2 very successful agribusiness exits. Remi, I wonder if you could introduce yourself and give us your perspective on the investment opportunity and perhaps where we'll find the greatest potential within Canada.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. So Remi Schmaltz, past CEO and co-founder of Decisive Farming. My last business was acquired by TELUS Agriculture. We're the 3rd acquisition that TELUS Ag made in December of 2019. Currently with TELUS Ag as part of director of leading, finding new innovation that we can layer into really the TELUS Ag ecosystem there. So in terms of opportunities, I think it's a really interesting time in Canada. We've got really kind of this pressure coming from government, from social pressure coming from consumers, which is flowing down through the food chain. And so we're seeing things like the Canadian government requiring a 30% reduction in fertilizer in Canada. And in some ways that's scary for the industry, but it's also really positive in terms of creating opportunity and really driving forward a lot of the innovation and opportunity in the Canadian ecosystem. And so things like whether it's around, further data collection on the farm that meets the standards that the government's looking for, but also creates value add in terms of, turning raw commodities into value added goods. And so I think that we're kind of at the cusp of this really moving fairly fast, and it's been moving fairly fast for the last 5 years, but I think we're going to see it accelerate even faster.
Thanks, Remi. I love everything cellular and genomic, and Future Fields is one of my favorite companies in the space. I've followed Matt, Lejjy, and Jolene's startup journey with keen interest for some time now. This company is imagining what the future can be. Lejjy, can I get you to introduce yourself in Future Fields? And when you imagine the future, I think you face a very long road. Give us some idea of what you think your challenges are ahead, and give us some ideas on what you think you can do to really push cellular ag ahead in Canada.
Yes, thank you for the intro. I'm Lejjy Gafour. I'm one of the co-founders of Future Fields. And if you're not familiar with cellular agriculture, it really used to be known as lab-grown meat, now referred to as cultivated meat. And it is the act of creating food without the animal, using cells to make the same products you see on the market today. And how we got our start is one key challenge in the industry. This being so new is growth media, or rather what you have to feed the cells to eat. It is prohibitively expensive and has made the cost of these products not feasible to get on to consumers on grocery shelves today. But as you saw in the previous slide, there is quite a bit of investment going on with companies like Analyst as one example. And today, right now, we are actually shipping out globally to companies around the world from Edmonton, Alberta, to drive the cost of these products down to get products to market. We do indeed have a long road, but the early investment we received from investors that really took the bet on us as an unsure thing, and in the industry in general, has got us to where we are today. And the challenges we see in the future really come down to consumer acceptance of these technologies, being able to drive the cost down further so that it's an acceptable price are the two common things that get brought up. But in our case, in regards to the cost, you will still see news articles about growth media. It's too expensive. Thus, the cost to consumers will be too expensive. But today already,
I think I'll hold you there, Lejjy, if I may, because we can come back to that. You're actually covering a lot of territory there. I think Lenore set the stage for the opportunity in controlled environment agriculture, and Steve mentioned it as well. I have some great interest. We've seen some SPACs, we've seen some large valuations and investments. And I'm going to put you a bit on the spot because, Dave, I understand you can take the heat a little bit. And I see many challenges to scale, largely due to the cost of heating, lighting, physical space. And I'd like to address a specific area of your technology that I'm fascinated in, and that is the area of growing livestock feed. David and Cubic Farms. You're on mute, David.
Apologies. Live green animal feed is, I think, something that's absolutely going to change the livestock industry. Livestock farmers are under enormous pressure because of drought and just also the carbon footprint that livestock farming introduces. And so Hydrogreen, our livestock feed division, actually solves several of these problems. And we're able to grow enormous quantities of live green feed indoors at scale, and do so in a way that actually does have a significant return on investment very quickly because of the increased performance of the animals. So, for example, in the dairy space, you'll generate significantly more milk, much lower issues on the issues of botrytis. And then reproductive health is significantly increased. So you can actually not only address, both from an environmental standpoint, use far less water to grow this feed, like a fraction of the water, but then the value of your livestock is significantly increased. You're then able to have more animals per acre. So it literally ticks all of the boxes. And it is fully automated. So just like we heard before that automation is crucial, Hydrogreen is fully automated. There is as close to zero labor as you can get within this system.
Okay, thanks very much, Dave. I think I'd have a number of follow-up questions for you, but I like your perspective. I see that risk management in agriculture has greater implications than in other industries. We have long investment cycles driven by biology, means that there's often several years between planning and outcomes. and production and price volatility can lead to significant swings in output. What I'd really like to ask Rob and Remi, because most of us are investors on these calls, can I get you to comment on the investment risk you see in ag? And can I also get you to comment on the 2 or 3 things that you look for in an investment and or its founder? And maybe that will just cover what the risks are in investing in ag. Remi,
why don't you take this?
Oh, very kind of you, Rob. Thank you. Okay, so, I think the unique thing about ag, and I'm going to focus on my background primarily in broadacre agriculture. So if we, there's so many segments, to cover. So I'm going to focus on that as a starting point. But, a farmer has, in the Northern Hemisphere anyways, 30 opportunities to grow a crop, right? 30 tries, right? If you compare that to manufacturing, every second you're producing a widget. And I think it's a very fundamental thing that many people don't understand when they try to bring things to market and drop it off on the farm and say, hey, you should use this. The risk that the farmer is taking. And so, that's really, step one for me is in understanding or looking at investments in this space is, go-to-market strategy is absolutely, it's always critical, but it's even more critical in ag because of this. So I think that deep domain knowledge and understanding of the space is key. How that product's going to get to market. If they're selling direct to farm, door knocking on farms, I've done it personally. It's not easy. It's tricky because of that relationship that you need and the trust that you have to have on the farm. So I think, that's kind of the key piece. I mean, aside from that, I think it's the scale of the technology. So, how are we able to scale this across a broad region? I'm sure one of Alison's questions about cubic farms is, hey, we have customers that silage thousands of acres of barley to feed their animals, right? How many containers is that? Is that actually a scalable thing that we can do, right?
And Remi, that's a really great point. Remi, let's let Dave respond to that, if you don't mind.
Awesome.
Sure. So I think the biggest difference between a hydrogreen solution, it's not that you're eliminating all the other forage. It's that a significant piece, in dairy, 15 to 20% now of their ration can be live green feed 12 months a year. And the difference is we're sprouting that grain. So instead of just seed and hay, you're actually sprouting that grain. And so you're harvesting 365 days a year. We're actually able to achieve a dry matter increase of about 20%. But that is that sprouted plant, because you're giving them the roots, the seed, the top. They're getting the access to the most efficient nutrition possible. They're able to absorb all of that nutrition, and then they perform so much better. So it's the most efficient way to get nutrition into that livestock.
Dave, if I could get that DMI increase, I would be right behind you 100%. So I'm going to be coming back to you on that.
We have the data.
Oh, very good. Rob, maybe you could follow up on that. When you're looking at an investment, how important is that trial data and the proof data when you make an investment?
Yeah, so sometimes we have the luxury of having that data and sometimes we don't, right? Agriculture is working in the world of atoms, and, traditionally venture capital has worked primarily best in the world of software, the world of bits. In the world of atoms, things can take longer, things can not work, and there is often a lot of cost involved in those types of systems. So, what we're looking for is a great why now story. And that's one of the questions we often ask founders is well, why now? Why hasn't this come up before? So usually there's, a policy change, a technology trigger, or some sort of really unique insight or that brings these things together that makes something a tractable problem. And, at the stage that we invest, seed and A primarily, the seed stage, we're often making, a bet. And then we're betting on the founder. We're really looking at that technical pedigree to see if they have the capabilities. We're going to talk to customers if they have them. We're going to try to sanity check that. Does this square with reality or not? This makes some investments easier than others, right? So automation, for instance, is an area that's a little bit easier. Biotech is hard because does it work? I don't know. You have to go test it, right? We really do have to test it.
So Lejjy, this is up. We're just all pitching to each other here. Rob put forth a challenge. Why don't you respond to that challenge?
Yeah, I agree with Rob's comments. It is actually a challenge, such as in the case of my industry, cellular agriculture, where there's a mix between biotechnology and agriculture. Where running science-based experiments can take time, and you might have to do them over and over again. But the technology in our case is at a point where we actually have been able to produce that data, have been able to ship out to customers globally to get the data back, to prove our value proposition and begin to build up those repeat customers. So in our case, we are fortunate that we've been able to put proof to the pudding, and Rob has been pivotal in that for us.
Okay, thanks, Lejjy. So we've just got a few more minutes. Thank you all for being very reflective and very rapid and quick in your responses. Can I give you each just one minute or so to just sum up? The potential for ag is obviously incredible. What do you need from investors on this call? First off, from the two founders, Dave, maybe you could give us an idea of what you need. Lejjy, you next. And then Remi, I'm going to give you 1 second to just say what you think about the overall ag industry, where our future is going. And then Rob, you can just take it home.
Well, thanks. We really do invite investors to join us on this journey. Probably one of the most compelling things we can share is next Thursday, we've got an event called Cubic Farms Amplified, and you can register for that on our website to really share where certainly Cubic Farms, with both our live green animal feed division, Hydrogreen, and the Cubic Farm technology division for growing produce, is going. And we're launching a new category called local chain ag tech. So just like Lenore referred to earlier, so much comes from so far away, and yet now so much technology exists to be able to grow much of what we need locally. So we'd be happy to just invite people to join us on this journey, and that'd be the greatest place to learn about it.
Thanks, Dave. Lejjy?
Yeah, for us right now, we're fortunately a growing company. We're heading towards raising our Series A. And we welcome the conversation with any investor that's looking at cellular agriculture, whether it's interested in us or their companies. We love to talk about it. And we really believe that now is the time to take those bets on companies such as ourselves globally to make these more sustainable technologies a reality.
Remi? Thank you, Lejjy.
Well, I think it's exciting times with, what we're seeing from a remote sensing side and connectivity, just frequency, the amount of satellites, different sensors geospatially that is going to allow for cheaper sensors on farm, autonomous, connectivity of autonomous vehicles, but also collection of data within that. And I think that all leads to really value added food products that we can start to export out of Canada versus just raw commodities. And so I think this is a really nice melting pot as these things come down in costs and we see higher frequency of it. So it's exciting.
Thanks, Remi. Rob?
So yeah, just to maybe tie it up, I do think this is one of the most exciting industries. There's almost not a technology in the world that we can't bring to bear on this at a time when we are almost reaching some sort of, technology singularity. We're in a real golden age. And I think when we look back in 15 years from now, it'll look sort of like the dark ages, given the technology advancements all happening at once. So for entrepreneurs and investors, if you're going to spend your time and money on this, find something big and worthwhile, find a story that has real consequence, and work from there. So.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Andrea, I think you heard that we all love ag, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Well, thank you very much to our panel for providing all of that insight. As I said at the beginning, we hope that you'll feel better informed on the opportunities in agri-food innovation. At this point, let me share my screen again. As a result of our speakers so far and everything that they've had to share, I'd like to remind you that this workshop is in preparation for our annual Agri-Food Tech Investment Forum occurring on November 3rd. And so please, if you haven't registered yet, take a minute to do so. The link is in the chat. And so now, last but not least, we'll have the opportunity to hear from some pitches from two innovative ag tech companies, WineCrush and Lucent Biosciences. First up, I'll invite Kirk Moir from WineCrush to present his pitch.
Thanks, Andrea. Hello, everyone. My name is Kirk Moir, and I'm the CEO of WineCrush. So let's start with a question that Rob already asked, why now? And I think the theme of today has been, I think we all know that transformation is coming to our global food chain. So it really is a question of why now for WineCrush? So in addition to being able to reduce a tremendous amount of food waste and the related carbon emissions, we also have the potential to put a tremendous amount of very nutritious calories back in the food chain with no additional land and no additional water resources, and really accelerate the push towards alternative proteins. So as you might imagine, that's our beachhead market. So when we look at the problems faced by our customers in plant-based food, they actually have quite a long list of deficiencies that we're working to address. Harvard does a great job of studying this market, so let's paraphrase their bottom line. Plant-based food is good for the planet, but it's not always good for our health. And again, when you look at where nutrition sits in the list of deficiencies, it's only one of a relatively long list. So that's where we come in. WineCrush is in the business of transformation. That is upcycling of agricultural side streams, starting with winemaking derivative and turning them into high performance, multi-function flavor enhancers with alchemic powers. So we're setting the bar relatively high. One example of that alchemy is being able to reduce sodium content in a typical plant-based food formulation by up to 80%. Another example is being able to extend shelf life by up to 60% in a long list of food categories by up to 60%, thanks to the antioxidant properties of our polyphenols. So as you might imagine, we face significant competition in the flavor enhancement world. But when it comes to multifunction ingredients delivering outstanding price performance and outstanding nutrition, we're quite unique in the marketplace. So that brings us to competitive advantages. And really it's around IP and our fermentation advantage. So of course, our intellectual property is in two forms, a number of patents in development and on file as we speak, as well as a growing family of trade secrets, which we'd be happy to talk more about under non-disclosure. We really see our focus on agricultural sustainability to be a competitive advantage for us. So when you do the math on just winemaking derivative, that is typically discarded per the picture in the middle, and creates a huge amount of methane. And really, when you do the math on that, it's a 50 megaton per year problem that nobody's really talking about. So that's kind of the high level. On the ground, it means that, of course, our input material is very plentiful. And I'd say more importantly, it means that our supply partners are very motivated to address their carbon footprint problem. So quickly looking at our business model, 2021 has been about validation of our product, our price, and our process. So we validated our price at between $12 and $18 per kilogram, comparing ourselves to wet flavor enhancers. We're delivering a gross margin in excess of 50% already. 2022 and 2023 will be about lowering our costs. And by 2024, we expect to be expanding our operational footprint to other geographies and other agricultural side streams. We are in the midst of our Seed 2 raise, and we look forward to answering questions that you have on that. So with that, let me say thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirk. Lastly, I'll invite Jason McNamee to pitch on behalf of Lucent Biosciences.
Hi, thanks everybody. Thanks for giving me your time. My name is Jason McNamee. I am one of the co-founders and the chief product officer at Lucent Biosciences, where we have developed an entirely new composition of matter and patented it as such, which we call soyleos. And soyleos is the first ever carbon neutral micronutrient fertilizer for use in row crops and in specialty crop industries. The reason that we developed that particular product is that the current suite of micronutrient fertilizers cannot deliver the right amount of nutrients where and when plants need them. And that's a problematic, because that means that there's a 20% missed yield potential due to lack of proper micronutrient application. Or if micronutrients are applied, they may not be able to be used by the crop. And that means that we could actually feed another 1.5 billion people on existing arable land if only we could deliver micronutrients in the proper fashion. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this particular pitch, is that we have solved that micronutrient delivery problem. How have we done that? We've done that through this composition of matter, whereby we upcycle low-value co-products from the food processing industry, cellulose-based. So for example, lentil hulls or pea hulls or wheat chaff, rice husk, that sort of thing. And we bind the micronutrients to those cellulose sources tightly enough that they don't leach or run off, but not so tightly that the microbiome in plants can't access. And in fact, the cellulose acts as a food source for the microbiome, and that microbiome actually is our delivery agent. Well, we know we've tested this a lot. We've run over 60 small plot research trials over the last 3 years, everywhere from Quebec to British Columbia and all the provinces in between. This year, we're running 40 plus demonstration scale trials from Ohio to Alberta and all the provinces in between, running the product through standard air seeders, corn planters, strip till planters, that sort of thing. What we've seen is a really nice increase in row crop yields, even better in vegetable crop yields. I want to caution everybody in these numbers that you see in the yields. I mean, they look fantastic here, and they are very good, but those are from small plot research trials, and we don't have the results from our demonstration scale trials this year. They're just starting to trickle in now. However, I would like to show you this photo from an independent agronomist in Iowa. This is a corn trial that we're running in Iowa this year. This is from August 6th. You can see that the corn planted with soyleos has matured much quicker, resulting in a lower risk. You can also see that the cobs have a much higher diameter, resulting in a better yield. The value proposition we offer to the farmer is pretty simple. It's an increase in the crop yield at an ROI of 3x or better, and improving the soil health by adding carbon to your soil. Value proposition for the planet is simple. We have a sustainable, carbon neutral, non-polluting fertilizer. Our business model is also simple. We work with food processors to upcycle their low value cellulose-based co-products into a high value commodity, which then can be white labeled or sold as a standalone product to fertilizers and seed coating companies, or to through regular distribution routes. And it goes right back to the farm where it started its life cycle. We can manufacture we manufacture the product for around $750 a ton. Our wholesale is about $1,850 a ton. Current The current suite of products, the low end of that product retails for around $3,000 a ton, which allows enough margin for our distributors and ourselves to make a decent margin. We've made our first sale. We sold 25 tons to a fertilizer distributor earlier this year, and we're sold out for the rest of this year, which isn't that much. It's only about 300 tons, but it does show traction. We're looking to scale up 20 times for the 2023 season. We're working on a proposal to the Protein Industry Canada Supercluster right now with AGT Foods to build a 20-ton-a-day facility in Regina, Saskatchewan. Our previous funding, we've got $4 million in equity and $2.2 million in grants, and we'll be raising a Series A of $10 million in the first quarter of 2022. We have a pretty great team. Michael Riedijk's our CEO, and Jose Goritoku these are two of our co-founders. We've recently added 2 independent directors, Michael de Jong, who's the former global head of seed care at Syngenta and the former president of Monsanto Canada, and Randy Barker, who's the CEO of Intent and the former global experience director at Monsanto. And we use Intent as a company to run our demonstration scale trials, so we have that independent review of those trials. Our management team, Michael's our CEO, Farnaz Nourmahmadian's our Chief Science Officer. She works in our lab at 4D Labs at Simon Fraser University. Pete's our Chief Technology Officer, and Caroline's our Director of Finance, and you have myself. So if you have any questions, feel free to buy yourself a little bag here. And thank you very much for taking the time to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jason, for that presentation. And I'd like to extend thanks to all of our speakers for providing some really great insight on the state of the Canadian agri-food value chain and presenting investment trends in the sector, and ultimately telling us about some exciting and innovative Canadian ag tech solutions. At this point, we're opening up our breakout rooms with our 2 pitching companies. We invite you to join those rooms, ask questions, and network as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and we hope to see you on November 3rd at the Investment Forum.